The silent tears of Mama Julia. The morning sun spilled gently over the fields of Kiem, a quiet village nestled deep in the red earth of East Africa. Roosters crowed in the distance, and smoke curled lazily from the tops of mud huts. Life moved slowly here, too slowly for dreams to grow, some would say. But not for Julia. She rose before the sun, her tired bones creaking like the wooden door she opened. Her hands, thick with calluses from years of hard labor, reached for the worn basket by the doorway. A soft cough escaped her lips, one she'd grown used to ignoring. Sickness had no place in her world. Not when Amara, her 12-year-old daughter, still slept inside, her face serene and unbothered by the weight her mother carried. Julia stepped into the cold morning air, pulled her thin shawl tighter, and made her way to the cassava fields. As she walked, she passed the great baobab tree, a giant, ancient thing with arms that stretched to the heavens. She paused. It was under this tree, years ago, she had buried her dreams. Now it was only a resting place for her exhaustion and her whispered prayers. "Let her be free," she murmured, pressing her forehead to the trunk. "Let her never kneel in the dirt like I do." Julia had once been bright, spirited, a dancer in the youth circle, the pride of her school. But poverty had snatched her future with merciless fingers. Her parents died when she was 17, and the man she married. Amara's father left her soon after their daughter's birth, disappearing into the promise of work in Nairobi. He never returned. Now, it was just Julia and her girl. And Julia's sickness, that grew heavier by the week. By midday, the sun beat down mercilessly. Julia's back ached, but she continued pulling weeds from the base of the cassava plants. Sweat dripped from her brow and fell onto the parched earth, mixing with the tears she refused to shed. At home, Amara had woken. The girl moved about quickly, sweeping the compound, heating water, and preparing a small breakfast of porridge. When her mother returned, she greeted her with a smile that hid worry, far too old for her years. "You work too hard, Mama." Julia smiled, brushing dust from Amara's cheek. "And you talk too much. Go and read. You'll be late." Amara's books were secondhand, with pages torn and words faded, but she held them like treasure. She was the only girl in her class. The village often whispered behind their backs, asking why a poor woman like Julia bothered sending a girl to school. But Julia always answered the same, because her future does not belong to the soil. That night, after Amara had eaten and settled to study by candlelight, Julia sat under the baobab tree again. Her cough had worsened. It shook her so hard her body curled in pain. She clutched her chest and leaned her head back against the bark. "God, don't take me yet," she whispered to the sky. "Not until I see her in a gown. Not until I see her walk across a stage with those books in her arms." Silence replied. The stars blinked gently above, indifferent to her sorrow. And Julia cried quietly, so Amara would never hear. She wept not for herself, but for the fear that her body would betray her before her daughter's dreams could be born. In the days that followed, her illness deepened. She hid it well. She laughed at the table, hummed lullabies while stirring the pot, and tightened her headscarf to mask the weight loss. But Amara was watching now. She noticed the shaking hands, the shortness of breath, the way her mother leaned heavily against the walls when she thought no one was looking. One evening, Amara found her mother asleep under the baobab tree, curled like a child, sweat soaking her blouse despite the evening chill. "Mama," she cried, shaking her. "You're not well." Julia opened her eyes slowly, smiled faintly. "I was just dreaming. You need to see the nurse. I'll walk with you." "No, child." Julia sat up, wincing. We have no coins. I'll be fine. You always say that. Amara burst. You always pretend you're fine, but you're not. You're not. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and Jaliyah held her tightly. Shish, my love. Don't cry. But Amara couldn't stop. She had never seen her mother weak. Not like this. That night, Jaliyah lay awake long after Amara had fallen asleep. She stared at the ceiling and thought of the promises she had made to herself. To fight. To survive. For Amara. She remembered her own mother's hands worn and blistered just like hers and how they'd worked until they bled, just to put a little ugali on the plate. The cycle had to end. It had to end with her. Even if she died trying. A week later, she collapsed in the field. The women of the village found her and carried her home. Amara sat at her bedside, gripping her hand, whispering desperate prayers. The village nurse, a stern older woman named Mama Becca, came with her medicine box. After examining Jaliyah, she pulled Amara aside. She's very ill. It's her lungs, maybe tuberculosis. Without hospital treatment. Tell me what to do, Amara said, her voice breaking. I'll do anything. You'll need money, child. More than this village can give. Amara looked at her mother, pale and trembling in bed, and something hardened in her chest. The helplessness burned. She would not sit idle. She rose early the next day and went to the market. She asked for work carrying water, cleaning stalls, selling peanuts. Anything. She refused to let her mother die under a tree, forgotten. Each night, she returned with a few coins and laid them by her mother's side. And each night, Jaliyah took her daughter's hand and whispered, I see stars in your eyes, Amara. Don't let them go out. And Amara nodded, because she had no voice left for crying. Amara's dreams, the world's chains. The market in Kiemb was a place of noise, color, and desperate ambition. Women shouted the price of ripe tomatoes, children darted between baskets, and flies swarmed around slabs of fish laid under the hot sun. In the middle of it all stood Amara, her school uniform replaced by a faded blue dress, and her eyes once bright now sunken with worry. She carried a basket of roasted groundnuts, moving stall to stall, calling softly, peanuts, fresh peanuts. But people rarely listened. Some turned away, others gave her a coin just out of pity. Still, she kept walking. Each step meant another shilling. Each shilling meant medicine. Each breath her mother took at home was a reason to keep going. At school, her seat remained empty. The teacher, Mr. Baraka, asked the class where she was. Some students shrugged. Others whispered cruel things. She finally gave up. That poor girl belongs in the market, not a classroom. But Amara's dreams hadn't died. They had only been buried like seeds under the baobab tree, waiting for the rain. Nights were the hardest. She would return to find her mother coughing, her body thin like paper, sweat soaking her pillow. Amara would cool her forehead with a wet cloth, grind dried herbs Mama Becca had given her, and whisper stories into the dark to make her mother forget the pain. Do you remember when I was 5, Mama? She'd say, brushing Jaliyah's hair. I tried to cook porridge and burned the whole pot. Jaliyah would chuckle softly. You wasted all the flour. I should have beaten you. But you didn't. No, Jaliyah would smile faintly, because you lied so sweetly and told me the wind did it. They would laugh together. Just for a moment, the world felt whole. But soon, the laughter would turn into silence. Jaliyah would close her eyes, too tired to speak, and Amara would sit there, watching her breathe, counting each breath like it might be the last. One day, as she returned from the market, Amara saw the school children walking home. They laughed, tossing their bags in the air, teasing each other. Among them was Quito, a boy who had once shared his lunch with her when she forgot hers. He saw her, holding the peanut basket, her feet dusty and swollen. "Amara, you're not coming back to class?" he asked. She hesitated. "Not now. Mama's sick. I need to help her." Quito frowned. "But you were top of the class. You said you wanted to be a doctor." "I still do," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "My uncle works with the mission in Mabali. They sometimes help children pay for school, even medicine." Amara's heart skipped. "Can he help Mama?" "I don't know. But I'll ask." Hope. It returned like a drop of rain in the desert. That night, Amara told Jalea, "There's a mission. They help people. Maybe they can help you. And I can go back to school." Jalea, already weak, gripped her daughter's hand with surprising strength. "Amara," she said, "listen to me." "I'm listening, Mama. I want you to promise. Even if I go, even if God takes me, you will not give up your dream." Tears welled in Amara's eyes. "Don't say that. Promise me." "I promise," she whispered. Then Jalea closed her eyes. "Good. Because I see the world in you. I see more than fields and markets. You're not just my daughter. You're my second chance." Days passed. Quito returned with good news. His uncle had spoken to the missionaries. They agreed to fund Jalea's treatment if Amara agreed to attend their school program in Mabali, a full scholarship. Amara ran home, breathless with joy. But when she arrived, Jalea was coughing blood. The floor was stained, her body shook violently, and her breathing came in painful gasps. Amara screamed for help. Mama Becca came, and the villagers gathered. They carried Jalea on a makeshift stretcher and loaded her onto a borrowed motorcycle. Amara sat behind, holding her mother's hand the entire bumpy ride. At Mabali Clinic, Jalea was admitted immediately. The missionaries were kind, giving her a clean bed and strong medicine. Amara sat beside her day and night, refusing to leave even when the nurses insisted. "Go eat something," they said. But how could she eat when the only soul she loved was fighting for life? Late one night, Jalea woke up, her eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. "You must go with them," she whispered. "The missionaries. They will take you to school." Amara shook her head. "Not without you, child," Jalea said. "You made a promise." Amara wept. "I won't let go," she cried. "I won't leave you alone." "You're not leaving me," Jalea whispered, her voice barely there. "You're carrying me with you." 2 mornings later, Jalea died in her sleep. Amara sat beside her, holding her hand long after the nurses had drawn the sheet over her mother's face. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply sat there, silent, broken. The funeral was small. The missionaries helped bury Jalea in a quiet place near the mission grounds, under a neem tree. Amara placed a stone on the grave and whispered her goodbye. "I'll plant your dream," she said. "And it will grow so big, the whole world will see." That afternoon, with nothing but a small bag and her mother's scarf wrapped around her head, Amara entered the gates of Mabali Mission School. Her eyes were red. Her heart was shattered. But inside her burned a promise stronger than pain. She would become a doctor. She would help others. And one day, she would return to Kiem, to the baobab tree, and show the village what her mother's love had built. The weight of a promise. Mabali Mission School was a world apart from the dusty markets of Kiem. The compound was enclosed by tall white walls, the buildings clean and painted freshly each year. Children wore ironed uniforms, spoke with confidence, and carried books like they were born to hold them. But Amara stepped into that world carrying only one thing: a promise made at her mother's grave. She was different from the others. Quieter. Older in spirit. Her eyes did not chase butterflies or boys or playground noise. They chased purpose, and it made her both admired and feared. Some teachers loved her determination. Others found her intensity unnerving. "She studies like her life depends on it," said Sister Miriam one day. "It probably does," replied Father Luku. At night, when other girls whispered gossip under mosquito nets, Amara would sit by the lamp, reading thick biology books the missionaries had donated. She would draw human organs in the margins, memorize symptoms, practice words like cardiopulmonary and nephrology like they were songs. When sleep finally took her, it was often with the book open on her chest and her mother's scarf wrapped tight around her shoulders. In her dreams, she walked the hallways of hospitals, her mother beside her smiling, breathing freely, no longer coughing. But every morning, the bed beside hers remained empty. And the scarf was all she had left. One day, a boy named Simba approached her during break. "You're always alone," he said. "I'm not alone," Amara replied, not looking up. Simba was the son of a local nurse. Smart, confident, and curious. He had seen many children come and go through the mission, but Amara intrigued him. "You want to be a doctor, don't you?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" She finally looked up. "Because pain should not be passed down like a necklace." Simba blinked. "That's deep. It's my mother's pain. I carry it now. But I will end it with me." From that day on, Simba sat beside her during study sessions. Not out of pity but admiration. Together, they challenged each other, corrected each other's mistakes, and pushed past limits most didn't even see. 3 years passed. Amara grew into herself. Her name appeared on honor rolls, her essays posted on boards, her science project sent to a national competition. But every victory was silent. She never jumped, never danced. One day, after topping her national exams, the principal called her in. "You've been offered a full scholarship to Kampala Medical University," he said, handing her the letter. Amara held it in her hands like it might dissolve. "You deserve this," the principal said. "You've carried so much." She nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir. I will carry it a little longer." Before leaving for university, Amara visited Kiem. The village hadn't changed much. The same dust, the same sun, the same children now grown into their own burdens. She walked past the baobab tree, past the broken stall where she once sold peanuts, and up the hill to her mother's grave. She sat by the neem tree for hours. "I'm going, Mama," she said softly. "You were right. The world is wide. But I will never forget this soil." She placed her exam results on the grave. "This is yours too." At university, the challenge multiplied. The city was big and loud. Lectures were crowded. Resources scarce. Some professors looked down on village kids with strange accents. But Amara had learned long ago to let fire fuel her. She studied harder than ever. Worked night shifts at clinics. Volunteered at mobile camps in rural areas. And each time she saw a coughing mother or a barefoot child, her hands grew steadier. One evening, while assisting an emergency C-section, the lead doctor turned to her and said, "You should be a surgeon." Amara looked down at the newborn in her arms and whispered, "Maybe I will be." In her final year, tragedy struck again. A cholera outbreak erupted in a nearby slum. Hundreds infected. Dozens dying. Medical teams were overwhelmed. Volunteers were called. Amara was the first to sign up. Simba, now a nurse in the city, found her dressing wounds, running IVs, and skipping meals. You'll burn yourself out, he warned. I'd rather burn saving someone than sit watching them die. He smiled sadly. You haven't changed. No, she said, but I've grown stronger. When the outbreak ended, the Ministry of Health awarded her a medal. Reporters wanted her story. Photos were taken. Praise poured in. But Amara's face remained unreadable. That night, she visited the hospital chapel alone. There, on a wooden bench, she let the tears fall for the first time in years. Not because she was tired, but because her mother would never see what she'd become. At graduation, her name was called last. Dr. Amara Nanjala, top of her class, Kampala Medical University. Thunderous applause. Simba stood in the crowd, clapping with pride. As she walked across the stage, she touched her chest where the scarf was hidden under her gown. She didn't smile, but her eyes, those deep, fierce eyes, shone like stars. The return of the daughter. Dr. Amara Nanjala returned to Kiembe not in a lorry, not on foot, but in a modest white van with a red cross painted on the side. The sun still beat down on the same red soil, but this time, it did not burn her with helplessness. It greeted her like a long-lost child come home. Children gathered as the van pulled into the village square. They had heard stories about the girl who became a doctor, about the cholera outbreak she fought, about the girl who once sold groundnuts and now carried a stethoscope. "Mama! It's her! The doctor girl!" a young boy shouted. She stepped out, dressed in a white coat, her mother's scarf still around her neck. And Kiembe held its breath. The elders welcomed her with drums and prayers. Old neighbors brought sweet potatoes and fresh mangoes as gifts. Even the same woman who once mocked her mother's cough now wept openly. "We didn't know what gold we had in our dust," she sobbed. But Amara wasn't here for praise. She had come to serve. She reopened the old Kiembe clinic, long abandoned after its last nurse left for the city. The building was cracked, its roof half collapsed, and rats had made homes in the filing cabinets. But Amara didn't flinch. She rolled up her sleeves. Simba came too, leaving his job in the city to help her rebuild. Others followed, former classmates, volunteer students, old friends who had once studied by her side under lamps. They cleaned, painted, rewired, installed beds, stocked medicine. Soon, the doors of the Kiembe Health Center opened. And hope walked in. Women carrying sick children, old men with weak hearts, pregnant mothers, children with burns and broken bones. They all came, and they were healed. Amara treated each patient not just with medicine, but with kindness. She listened. She explained. She held trembling hands. She knelt beside crying children. She laughed with the healed and mourned with the lost. To her, every life mattered, because she knew what it felt like when no one cared if you lived or died. One evening, a young girl came to the clinic. Barefoot, coughing, eyes filled with fear. Amara sat her down gently. "What's your name?" "Naima," the girl whispered. "And where's your mother?" "She died. Coughing like mine." Amara froze. She looked into the girl's eyes and saw herself years ago, barefoot and lost. She took the stethoscope, examined Naima's lungs, and began treatment. That night, she didn't go home. She stayed by Naima's bedside, just as she had once wished someone had done for her mother. Months passed. Kiembe changed. The village that once waited for aid now had its own doctor. Children spoke of becoming nurses. Mothers brought their babies for immunizations. Death no longer walked so freely in the streets. One day, the government visited. They stood before the clinic, cameras rolling. "We are proud to declare Kiembe Health Center as one of our model rural facilities," the minister announced. All thanks to Dr. Amara Nanjala. Applause rang. But Amara turned to the crowd and said, "This is not mine alone. This is my mother's dream. It is every mother's dream that their child should live better than they did. I'm just the daughter who kept a promise." That night, under the same neem tree where her mother was buried, Amara sat in silence. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. And for the first time in her life, she smiled. Not the polite smile of interviews. Not the tired smile of duty. But a full, open smile, the smile of healing. In the following years, Amara started a foundation, Mama Nanjala Hope Trust, offering scholarships to girls from rural villages who wanted to become doctors, nurses, and healers. Naima became her first student. Simba became her husband. The clinic grew. But more than bricks and beds, a legacy was born. Not just of medicine, but of love, of one mother's sacrifice, of one daughter's promise, and of a village that finally learned. Greater than sometimes, the one you overlook becomes the one who saves you. The end.